Hi, I'm Erin, and I want to talk about why your life matters. This is a big topic. I don't know if I can possibly sum it up in a few short minutes, and I try to keep my videos a little bit short, but I usually end up talking for at least 30 to 50 minutes. And this is such a really big topic and one that I want to address because I've been talking a lot about near-death experiences, shared death experiences, and how much love people describe on the other side when they pass away and they experience all this love, and then they come back into their body and it's like, oh, God, back to this. But some of that love stays with them, and we're all born with this, but it just starts to dissipate. This feeling and this connection to this source energy and love starts to dissipate over time, and we forget about it. And why do we forget about it? It's so painful. It's so painful not to remember how much love there is available to us in the universe. And I've listened to a lot of pre-birth experiences, near-death experiences, shared death experiences, and even have had extensive communication with people who have passed away through, various psychic mediums. And a few things. I was especially intrigued actually recently by listening to a pre-birth experience by Christian Sundberg, who has been interviewed on several different podcasts, Next Level Soul, Buddha at the Gas Pump, and numerous others. And I've actually been in communication with him. I don't know if I'll ever get to talk with him and do an interview with him directly, but I would absolutely love to. But he describes actually remembering before he was born and choosing his life, and then, deciding he wanted to come to Earth because it seemed like such an interesting experience, because he knew other spirits and souls who had been here, and he just was blown away, and he was like, I gotta go try that. So just a casual, I think I'll go check out this human incarnation thing, right? It sounds easy enough. And he said the first time he was conceived by a woman and was coming into the body, he just realized how dense and difficult and heavy this was going to be, and he bailed. He left, and so the mother miscarried. And then he actually remembers going through the life review and seeing this process and how much of an impact this had on the mother, and how, it affected people around her because she was in grief and sorrow. And so he was experiencing that. And this is one of the things that everybody describes when they go through the life review process, is that you look at your significant experiences in your life, not only from your own perspective, but from the other people's perspective. So you literally feel both sides of the story. And in this way, it's really, to me, like a unity experience, a unity consciousness experience, because we realize that it all is the self. Everything is the self. We all experience things that others go through as well, because we are one. And we might not realize it until we leave the body. But then this oneness and this connectivity between all souls becomes a lot more apparent. And this is something that, especially when we're alive, can seem so abstract, because there is so much division and so much of the other and competition and judgment and all these things that make it just seem like this idea of oneness is some just made up new age BS. And I just want to comment on that as well. Everything that we're looking at that, is described as new age, well, maybe not everything, but most things have been around for thousands of years. It's actually just ancient knowledge, timeless, past, present, or future knowledge of nature, of natural law, things that are very universal. And so they've been around a long time. For some reason, we have over time forgotten a lot of this ancient wisdom, and not just for some reason. It's been, suppressed, oppressed. The people, the keepers of these traditions and knowledge have been murdered. There's been genocide and colonization all over the planet. So a lot of this ancient wisdom was, not just lost like randomly, but purposefully wiped off the planet for the sake of control, greed, power. We think we're better than you. We know better. You heathens, all that. So anyway, don't even get me started on that. So Christian Sundberg, he was choosing to come into this human experience, left, decided, okay, I'm going to give it another go. And before being born, he went through the process of having the veil, this sort of simulation of what it feels like to have the veil of forgetfulness. Because when we're here, there's a veil that prevents us from seeing and perceiving spirit and remembering all of the immense love and harmony and purpose and, just joy and reason and even motivation for us to be alive as a person, our sole purpose. We forget. So we have to go through this grudgingly difficult process of, life. And sometimes we start to wake up to the fact that life as we think it isn't necessarily living. And this can be such a shock. And I've experienced this shock drastically over the past few years because I shared in another video my premonition dream about my shared death experience, which happened today. Today is March 17th. Happened exactly 5 years ago, March 17th, 2018. And so I had this premonition that I was going to start seeing spirit, both, any form of spirit on the other side that is assisting us, our angels, our spirit team, our spirit guides. I was going to have a better understanding of this just naturally. And I didn't know that this was going to come through the process of losing somebody who I cared about very much by suicide, and then having communication and many, many experiences with him because the veil was so thin between us, and sometimes it was completely non-existent. And I had worked with several psychic mediums around that time, and they all said the same thing. It's just the veil is very, very thin between you. And so this veil of forgetfulness that prevents us from really seeing the immense love and light that we are, and also prevents us from seeing it in other people. Sometimes we see it better in other people, but we don't necessarily, think we have that, or think that we have the power or the love or the capability or the abilities to live life so fully. How dare they have the audacity to be happy and joyous and be, abundant and thriving when, it's just sucked so bad to be in this body, and there's been, abuse and neglect and anger and sadness and poverty and just, all of the shit that we go through as human beings. So this memory process, this remembering, in Sanskrit, the term is smriti. Smriti is memory. And, when we access the deepest part of our self, big self, we start to remember our true nature. And this remembering is something that for some people happens gradually. For some people, it never goes away. This memory stays with them. We have it when we're children, and when we're toddlers, we're infants, we have it naturally, and then it starts to go away. But some people, it stays with them throughout their life, and their ability to connect with and see and communicate with spirit. For example, Britt Hart and Asia Harrison, the two psychic mediums, are twin sisters who I've worked with a lot. And I just posted a video, God requires us to show up. And that was a conversation that Asia and I were having, and I'll have more conversations with Britt and Asia over the next few months, I'm sure. But, they've had this ability since they were children, so it never seemed to go away. Now, people like myself and numerous other people that I've listened to who did have very pronounced psychic abilities and premonitions when they were young, and this kind of can be scary because you don't know. Like I saw 9/11. I wasn't, young when 9/11 happened. I was 23, but before that, when I was a teenager or younger, I would have experiences that I would see like as a very specific accident or tragedy. And I just felt like, why am I seeing this? Why am I responsible? Because you just don't know as a child. And I just want to point out also, I grew up in a spiritual New Age household. Yes, I grew up, in a household of meditators, and I had learned meditation when I was a child, but I didn't really do it that much. And I don't particularly think that the experiences that I had were necessarily directly related to that. I mean, certainly the fact that I was meditating probably helped, in some ways to cultivate this type of awareness. But I think it more has to do with being an empath or highly intuitive. But I think that everyone has the ability to develop their psychic, their extrasensory perception if that's something that they so desire to do. But I just say this because, some people might look or see my other videos and it's like, okay, well, she was practicing transcendental meditation, so maybe this is something that transcendental meditation does. But I can assure you that I know a lot of people because I grew up in transcendental meditation communities. I know a lot of other children and people who have grown up with it who don't have these experiences. And yet I meet so many people outside of the transcendental meditation community who do have these experiences. And I again think it has more to do with the fact that I'm an empath than any specific style of meditation that I've done. Although transcendental meditation and most forms of meditation will help enhance one's intuition and subtle perception for sure, and also inner knowingness, this inner guidance, this inner light that comes. And this is something that a lot of people talk about. I was actually just listening to a video with Britt Hart in Asia, the psychic mediums I just referenced, where they're talking about how our spirit team, our guardian angels will actually really guide us through the light in our heart. And this has been so reaffirming because it's been this light that sort of has come up that has led me to some really amazing things in my life. And it's just been an absolute reassurance that I was going in the right direction. Now, for me, this is the experience. There's a few things that I know are signs that it's an intuition or some sort of guidance, inner or angelic, however you want to look at it. A lot of people talk about intuition coming from the gut, which I personally don't have that experience if they're meaning that literally. And I think a lot of people do mean it quite literally, that they have feelings in there's like a gut instinct, but it's an actual physical, visceral feeling in the gut or abdomen area. And I don't know, because that's not my particular experience with how I receive intuition, but I believe it is for a lot of people. And so this pre-birth experience, near-death experience, shared death experience, when people have the awareness of remembering what they experienced on the other side of the veil, or when their consciousness, their soul was outside of their body and in this other dimension that, we don't normally have the ability to see and perceive in these limited, these limited eyeballs and the occipital lobe back here, how it processes information on the physical level is sort of limited. But there are other energy centers that can also enhance our vision. And so we can really perceive and know anything when our consciousness, when the energy or energy systems of our perception that is not limited or bound by these human eyeballs. We have the ability, because on a deeper level, beyond the, all this stuff, I just hit my mic, sorry. Beyond all that stuff, there is a field of consciousness. We are connected through this love this energy of love. People who have had near-death experiences and pre-birth memories, they describe it, how visceral the energy of love is, that it's just everywhere. And so it can seem so good. Why do we have to go through this? And yet, you know what, and to be honest, like, I don't know, and I don't think anyone really knows exactly what happens. And I don't think that it is the same for every person and every soul. I don't think the path, whether it's incarnation, I don't think everyone necessarily incarnates on earth over and over and over again in a cyclical, timely, you know, in like a timeline that is sequential. It might be other galaxies, or who knows where else we could incarnate as other beings, here or somewhere else. And, or sometimes maybe we don't. I don't know. It's a choice. We do have a choice to incarnate, I think, most of the time. Maybe sometimes there's not a choice. Again, I don't know. I don't think any one person has all of the answers. They might have answers from an experience they had, or from some ancient scripture or text or a religious description of what happens in the afterlife. But I don't think any one system or person has the full picture. It's like a puzzle that we're all sort of putting the pieces together. And I was listening to a really brilliant talk last night on Next Level Soul podcast, and you may have seen some of my short videos. I was really grooving out. I was actually literally just listening to the podcast and the music in my head. I didn't have any music playing, and it was just like, it just felt so good to hear. You know, I love listening to near-death experiences and people's description of their spiritual experiences, because for one thing, there's so much consistency. Even though every person's subjective experience is different, there's so much consistency in the love, the timelessness. There's no sense of time or space or distance, like a life review, or looking at what happens if they're to go back in their body, or looking at something that happened that caused them to have a certain kind of trauma in their life, or some illness. This process of reviewing it, which can seem like it's going on forever in the life review, it's actually only like a millisecond, or like there's no time. Because there is no time. Oftentimes people describe the process of our lifetimes because all past, present, and future are happening simultaneously. So actually, and this is one way to look at it, that, you know, that they're all happening at the same time. So you can sort of slip into, you know, a memory of a past life or a future life instantaneously, because it's happening right now. Now, I've heard other theories where it's like you're sort of moving along and leaving like a record, like an imprint, as you sort of are moving forward in time. And these records are the Akashic records. But then also the Akashic records hold the memory of everything in the future as well. So you can know past, present, or future. So I shared, you know, about this phenomenon that I experienced quite a bit when I was young, about premonition dreams, and how I used to have them every night when I was a teenager for quite a while. So that's in that video. But if we're here and it doesn't, you know, I've met a lot of people who don't believe in the afterlife, who don't think about the afterlife, who you know, believe there's like heaven and hell, and there's a lot of fear of God and judgment, which is very much like not my experience, because I didn't grow up with religion. I didn't grow up Christian or Catholic. I grew up with a very Eastern influenced household, also Native American, indigenous, you know, heritage. And like when I was a child, I was reading the Bhagavad Gita, ancient Hindu text from the Mahabharata, and it talks about, you know, that the body is just a vehicle. The soul comes and goes, and we step out of the vehicle when we pass away, but the soul does not die. And there are many, many different schools of thought on this. I've even heard something I thought was interesting, that it's like some souls, it's not even like they have this existence in between lifetimes. They kind of go into this almost like I think of like a preschool nap room, where everybody's just kind of like sleeping. So they really don't have any memory of like anything in between lives. And for them, the idea of incarnation or a past life or a future life, or that they're anything other than this particular incarnation that they're in right now, is just not even fathomable. It's because they don't have any recollection of it. And, so there's all possibilities. And I think people's beliefs are often based on their experiences right now. And since we don't remember, and we, really, literally almost all of us have this veil of forgetfulness that we come into this life with. Because I love Matthias De Stefano. If you're not familiar with him, he had a show on the Gaia channel, and he talks a lot about remembering all of his past lives and the time in between those lifetimes. And, and he's just like, if you were here and like remembering all that, we couldn't get none of us would get anything done. How could we like even just get dressed and sit down for work and make food and go to the grocery store? Like, we wouldn't get anything done. Maybe this is part of my problem sometimes. Sometimes I'm just like especially I have had extended periods in my life where I do a lot of meditation, because I lived as kind of like a yogi or a monk, and not like a religious one, but I lived in an institution where with many other people, where we meditated many hours a day to develop higher states of consciousness and elevate our own consciousness and the quality of consciousness and love and peace in the world. And there were days when, I'd just be so blissed out. But it was just like I'd go walk through the mountains, or like walk and talk with a friend, and just go to the river and just enjoy. And I didn't have to cook for myself. We didn't drive. We didn't go into town. And I lived like this for many, many months. And there are people that have been doing this for decades in many different cultures and traditions around the world. But in this particular facility as well, there were people that had been doing this for like 30, 40 years. And it's such a different reality. I remember going back into like a city or trying to go back to school afterward. It took me many months just to kind of like reintegrate and, just get into the groove of the day-to-day way of living. And this may sound like a complete waste of time, but I tell you, it was the most valuable time that I've ever spent, because it allowed, and this is where I had the experience of seeing 9/11 the day before. And also I had my first really, really clear communication with loved ones who had passed away, just sitting around doing nothing, because my awareness, my mind was so settled and so open and expanded that I could see and perceive and feel things on a deeper level that normally I would not have access to. So, and this is not something that, carried on long after, but the experiences were so profound and marked during that time that, I feel like it structured the next like 2 or 3 or maybe multiple decades of my life. It's only been, I'm in my mid 40s, and that was 2001. So, 20 years, it's been 20 more years. We'll see. But I truly think that, this kind of sort of removal of the rigid, way of living in the world allows us to look at things differently. And most people don't have that opportunity. And so I recognize this was a hugely privileged thing that I got to have this experience. And I also know that it's something that anyone who actually really wants it can have it. It's also not necessary for everyone to do this, but I do think that there is value in some meditation and some, just grounding and getting in touch with yourself, your body, your soul, your heart, filling your heart with love and joy. There are many, many ways to meditate. There are many things that can fill our hearts with love and joy. It can be, you know, our creative expression. This is such a profound way to just channel this divine energy and express it and experience it. Art, music, dancing, for me, that's like it. I'm such a big fan of dancing and just how it feels when your whole body just gets in that groove and that flow, and it's amazing. And you know, when you just like become one with the music and the sound and the people around, it's just so phenomenal. So anyway, life matters, you matter, and there are many, many things that you can do to enhance your memory and your experience of living right now. And part of the reason that I'm, you know, thinking about all this and just wanting to share about it, and like if you don't know, you know, whatever your background is, whatever your belief system is, if you don't know that you have a reason to be here, that's okay. Most people don't. Most people have no clue why the F they're here and what they're here to do. And you might not even have some big purpose. Maybe the purpose is just to enjoy. That's it. Simple. Maybe there is something more. Sometimes we get these little nudges, these little whispers of like, oh, you know, I could do that. Oh, and you get little glimpses, like a little vision. And it might seem impossible. It might even seem crazy. But oftentimes I have found that these little faint little whispers and just allowing your awareness just to kind of freely roam in this imaginative space. This is often when we like are actually truly communicating with our soul, for lack of a better word, our higher self or our divine purpose. And it's easy to forget and to ignore and to dismiss those ideas. But they're often right. And I'm very fortunate in the last few years. I've had a lot of validation and confirmation of some of these things. And my whole lifetime, really, again, going back to this time that I spent living in like this, you know, this ashram where we were meditating many hours a day. This was when I really got the clarity and the vision of exactly what I wanted to do. And you know what? I left and I did it. And it manifested beyond my wildest dreams and imagination at that time and led to me doing so many things that, you know, I just feel incredibly fortunate to have been a part of. And the world needs people who are listening, people who are waking up to this and who are remembering who they are and why they're here and can bring this love and light. And not that it's just like all love and light and like, nah, this shit ain't easy. It's not easy. It's hard. And I can't tell you how many times I have spent, you know, days and weeks in puddles and fetal position, crying and screaming and purging and just wanting to punch everything and smash everything because of the blockages that were within me, my own pain and anger and resentment and inability to, you know, to love and live freely without these things clogging my mind and my perception. So, you know, anything that can give you rest, clarity, release, relief, perspective. I've shared in other videos, I've done a lot of 12-step work where I was really processing through and releasing these resentments. And I remember the first day that I started working on my 4th step, I was on the ground shaking, convulsing when I started to put the pen to the paper and write out some of my deepest fears and experiences that had traumatized me. And it just so happened a friend of mine showed up at the door. She, you know, her and her partner literally showed up at my house unannounced, unexpected. And they just walked in like, oh my God, what is happening right now? And they were there to support me. And I just like crawled into my bedroom and crawled and leaned on my bed and was just like, just take this pain away, just begging God just to take some of this pain and agony away. And it didn't happen overnight. But through recognizing and working on these traumas and patterns in my life and my response and my reaction to them. It's a totally different world now, of course, than I had other experiences that were difficult, and have been processing those, but same. Not ignoring them, actually dealing with them, not just sweeping them under the rug, has allowed me to actually in many ways benefit from those experiences. So I know you can too. Life has probably been rough. You probably feel completely alone and isolated in some of your experiences and unique in your experiences, because you are. You are. We're also, none of us are, because we're all in this shit show together. There are a lot of people that talk about the immense sort of power and special quality that is happening on the planet right now of souls coming in who chose to be here to help shift the level of consciousness on the planet right now. There's a really good channel that actually talks about a lot of these different teachings. It is The Reality Revolution. It's a guy named Brian Scott, and he's a phenomenal reader. He was on debate team when he was in high school, and he just has this really great way of discussing things. He reads from so many different philosophers and mystics from a lot of the even 19th century, 20th century, a lot of people that, aren't necessarily on like ebooks or audiobooks, like Walter Russell, for example, so many people. So I really highly recommend that channel. I'll tag it in the description. Okay, I said I was going to keep this video short. Is there anything else? It's already been over 30 minutes. I said I was going to keep it under 30 minutes. Okay. All right. Well, I love you very much, and I really hope that there was some morsel of information in this video that helped you to maybe understand a little bit about where I'm coming from and get a little guidance on, life is precious. Life is very precious. I hope you find some inspiration to make the very most of it while you're here. Live a life you will remember.